rural healthcare in America faces a critical shortage of providers and resources. Our next guest, Dr. William Paiva, is on a mission to transform rural and Native American health through innovative solutions. As managing partner of OLSF Ventures and executive director of Oklahoma State University's Center for Health Systems Innovation, William brings over 2 decades of experience in healthcare venture capital and innovation. With a unique background spanning molecular biology, business, and finance, William offers invaluable insights into addressing rural healthcare disparities. Join us as William shares his journey of being lucky in healthcare innovation, his leadership roles in supporting groundbreaking care delivery, and IT solutions for underserved communities, a sneak peek into his upcoming book, My Life in the Middle Seat, and how he and his team are bridging rural America's healthcare disparities gap with innovative solutions. Let's go. Welcome to Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli, where we highlight and speak with the innovators, the game changers, and the pioneers who are deeply passionate and relentless in solving the problems our world is facing today. This is your opportunity to connect with and learn from these leaders and to support them on their mission. Perhaps they will soon be hearing your story as well. This is Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. I look forward to having you on this journey with us. Hi, William. A big welcome to our podcast today.
Thank you very much. I'm so excited to be here, and I really am honored to be here and excited to talk about some of the work we're doing at the center and some of the things I've learned throughout my life.
Well, given your deep expertise and passions within the health and biotech industries, from venture capital to management consulting, as well as your commitment to extend your expertise to others through education, and now as an author, I'm incredibly thrilled and honored to have this conversation today. But before we dive in, a bit of housekeeping. While listening to any of our episodes, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you will automatically receive episode updates in your podcast player. Simply search Passionate Pioneers, the Mike Biselli and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And lastly, please visit the bottom of the episode notes to connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter in order to further the conversations occurring on this podcast. All right, William, it's almost time for our community to learn how you and the Center for Health Systems Innovation at Oklahoma State University are transforming rural and Native American health through the implementation of innovative care delivery and information technology solutions. Additionally, I cannot wait for you to share a bit more about your new book, My Life in the Middle Seat. But first, what's that one piece of advice that you would give to others who are passionate about reimagining the health of our world?
My biggest piece of advice to people, and it permeates not only their professional life or in healthcare, but also your personal and everything you do, is I like to say, be lucky. It's an easy skill to learn because it'll improve your personal life. It'll improve your professional life. And as we continue to try to innovate within healthcare, it's such an important component of your life because of connectivity that's going to make your life more lucky, which will benefit you long term. So be lucky. It's an easy skill to learn.
Oh my gosh, William, I love it. So one of the things that my coach, while playing ball at Stanford, Coach Tyrone Willingham, I know we all have 3 to 5 folks that we can really look to in the course of our life. That we say, man, that person had a true mark on the trajectory of my own personal life. Coach Willingham was that for me. And William, he used to always say to us while playing ball for him at Stanford, he goes, boys, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. That's exactly what you're talking about. And it sounds like that's been part of your journey this entire time. I know it's going to be jumping off the pages in your new book, My Life in the Middle Seat. I've heard a little bit about it as a teaser from some of the work we've done in the past before recording this episode, William. But is that a tenet that you've lived by for some time? And of course, is that what you also like to teach others? I know you do some teaching, you get to work and be an advisor a lot. Is that something that you share quite a bit, this notion of being lucky?
Yeah, 100%. Because when I look back on my life and then when I talk to people, many people from the outside looking in, they always seem to think that you got, quote, lucky, right? So various things happen to you, which are good fortune, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, and some of the work we're doing at the center and some of the work we're doing at our venture fund. And sometimes people look at it and they're like, holy cow, you really got lucky. When in reality is you can go back in time and find things that very specifically that you did that put you in a position to be lucky. And it's not only about putting yourself in the position to be lucky, and it's not about going to the right things, but that's part of it. It's not about preparation, but that's part of it. It's also about your mind and your heart, Mike, have to be open to it. So it's not about just simply showing up. It's not simply about the extra time in the gym. It's really also about your mind and your heart have to be opened up to the lucky and have your eyes open and your heart open for it.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely love it. And it's a great starting point and a jumping off point for some of the things that we're going to be talking about, including the incredible work that you and the team have been leading for a number of years now around the Center for Health Systems Innovation at Oklahoma State University and everything that you've done on the venture capital side, as well as, again, your new book coming out, My Life in the Middle Seat. We're going to unpack all of that and more after we get back from thanking our community champion sponsor.
Healthcare faces a paradox that echoes through generations. While the current practices that help heal patients today are vital, it is crucial to evaluate them through an environmental lens. OSHA's Responsible for Tomorrow initiative is a collection of interviews featuring influential thought leaders and industry experts like you who share their sustainability strategies, insights, and provide valuable perspectives from diverse industries to inspire innovation within the healthcare sector. OSHA invites you to join this journey. Want to share your sustainability story? OSHA is actively looking for partners to highlight the important and inspiring work being done around the globe. Check out OSHA's Responsible for Tomorrow initiative and series at OSHA.com. That's OSSUR.com. Or visit the episode notes and click on their link. Together, and with OSHA helping lead the way, let's all be responsible for tomorrow.
All right, we are back with William Paiva, Executive Director, Center for Health Systems Innovation at Oklahoma State University, as well as the founder and managing partner at OLS Ventures, and a newly minted author with the book coming out, My Life in the Middle Seat. William, an absolute pleasure. So great to finally have you on the podcast. I've been waiting for this one for a while, but thank you so much for teeing up the conversation on the front end and for our community. This notion about being lucky, it's this mindset, it's the heart speak, it's how we go about our daily life. And I know a lot of that has been in some of the incredible things that you have led and as a national leader in our space for many, many years. It hasn't been just a flash in the pan. You have been doing it day in and day out. We have a lot to discuss, everything from the center, from your venture work to being an author or otherwise. Let's dive in, William. How the heck did all of this come to be in the first place? How did you find yourself in healthcare, in biotech? And then, like I said, we'll dive in a little bit more current state of exactly what the Center for Health Systems Innovation at Oklahoma State University is, et cetera. But William, take us behind the scenes. Take us on the journey. How'd this all come to be for William Paiva in the first place?
Great. Thank you, Mike. And I don't know how far back to go. So let's go back to 1963. My parents met and they fell in love. I'm just kidding. We won't go that far back. But
It's a 4-part series.
Fair enough. It's a trilogy rather than a podcast, right? We're going to do 3 of these. I'm just kidding. So my parents I was actually born in Germany. My mother was German and my father was Portuguese, and they immigrated and came to the United States to raise their kids in America. And, neither one of my parents graduated from high school. Dad was a mechanic. Mom worked in the school cafeteria. So that's the context of my background as far as how I started my journey, and grew up in Texas and then ultimately graduated from high school in a smaller rural town in Oklahoma. Went to the University of Oklahoma mainly because my brother had gone to Oklahoma State University, so I went to the University of Oklahoma. It was a very complicated decision tree for college, right? Had he gone to the University of Oklahoma, I'd have gone to Oklahoma State University. It was that complicated of a decision tree. But growing up in that smaller rural town, when you live in those small rural towns, what you end up focused on, or as if you're thinking about careers in life, the doctors, the lawyers, and the bankers, they're all driving nice cars. So when I went to college, I was like, okay, great. I'll either become a doctor, a lawyer, or a banker. And I liked science. And so I started on a career of being a scientist and ended up ultimately getting a PhD in molecular biology after working in a hospital, and decided I actually didn't want to do clinical care on a day-to-day basis, and became a PhD scientist and had a PhD in molecular biology, ended up postdocing in neurobiology. But along that journey, I decided, gosh, what I really want to do is get on the applied side of science. And so ended up going to business school, went to Dartmouth College, got an MBA, and that really started me on the trajectory that I wanted to go on to, Mike, as it relates to the convergence of healthcare and business, really specifically focused on finance, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And then, worked at JP Morgan in New York, worked at Merck in New Jersey doing business development. And then 24 years ago, launched my venture capital fund, which in venture capital world makes me one of the old guard, or I guess as they call me on the floor, the OG. And at first, when I was called OG on the floor, I thought they were calling me the old guy. And it kind of made me mad, Mike. So I pulled a guy aside. I said, hey, they called me the old guy. And like, that's not real cool. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, they call me OG. He said, well, that's not really old guy. That's the original gangster, right? And I was like,
exactly.
Okay, that's cool, right? And so anyway, so I was on my venture capital journey for 14 or so years. And then Oklahoma State University launched a center called the Center for Health Systems Innovation. It was endowed by Neil Patterson. Neil was the founding CEO of Cerner Corporation. He wanted to give back to Oklahoma State University. He gave money back. I was invited to go on the board of the center. And then about a year later was asked to become the executive director of the center for any number of reasons. I told him I was more than happy to do it, but I was going to continue my venture work, and then I would help launch this innovation center. So that's kind of the journey of my life, and there's a lot in that to unpack, I know, but that's kind of the journey of how we got there. Now let's focus on the center. When we launched the center, I said, well, gosh, what are we actually going to do? And honestly, Neil didn't really care what we did as long as we did things that were novel and innovative. And so, like many venture capitalists, and having backed a number of entrepreneurial companies, I've often said on the entrepreneurship side, entrepreneurs have a great ability to discover solutions for problems that don't exist. And so I said, okay, well, we're not going to do that for our innovation center. So the very first thing we did is we went out there and looked at where are all the innovation centers focused in the United States. And it turns out they tended to focus in urban areas or in therapeutic areas, right? So specific therapeutic clusters like a diabetes innovation center or a cystic fibrosis innovation center or an innovation center focused in the Northeast or in, wherever, right? But other than the University of Iowa, we didn't find a single center that was focused on rural healthcare. And in the case of our center in Oklahoma, because it's also where the 5 civilized tribes are, Native American health. So I said, aha, nobody is there. So let's go after rural and Native American health. And so we set a course to go specifically and right at rural and Native American health, really because it was an unmet market need. Now, that was 10 years ago, right? And over that period of time, it's often great when the strategy works out. I'll tell this story that I had the sage wisdom and predicted this was going to happen. But if you wanted to go under the hood and behind the scenes, this will come up later, I actually got lucky. But because what happened over that period of time is a lot of people got very focused on rural healthcare and also Native American healthcare. So there's a lot more interest 10 years later on rural and Native American health. And before I leave the topic, Mike, because I know this is your podcast and you're probably like, holy cow, William, stop talking because this is my podcast. But one of the things that I like to remind people is we love talking about health disparities, whether it's North Tulsa versus South Tulsa, whether it's inner city Cincinnati and suburbia, whether it's the Northeast versus the South. But the reality is rural healthcare, together with Native American health, is the largest health disparity in America. 20% of our population, 75 million Americans, are living in rural markets dealing with inadequate healthcare. And that has to stop. So that's the journey of my life, and that's how we got to the center. Did I answer your question, Mike?
Not at all. It was horrible. Let's start from the top.
You want to scratch that and start over?
Yeah, tear it all down. That was horrendous. No. William, no, in all joking aside, William, I truly appreciate you framing it up because that's exactly what we need to be doing right now in healthcare and even prior. And when you and the team started doing a scan across the nation and seeing where folks are building their centers for innovation and you guys saw some white space, what an amazing area to serve. And just like you said, 10 years later, you're right. You guys got lucky. But again, from my perspective, what Coach always said, preparation met opportunity. And then there it was too. You guys kept leading, kept fighting for what is right in this space. And here you are, the leading center for exactly where so much attention, rightfully so, is being shined upon the rural aspect of health and care in our country. So couldn't agree more with exactly how you framed it up. Very, very important work, William. Now, let's talk about a little bit of exactly what the center is doing today. Obviously associated with Oklahoma State University. Go Cowboys. And for our OU fans, I apologize. But let's talk about that. How important was it in regards to collaborating and be closely tied to the university And let's talk about what exactly you guys are solving. What are the challenges you're going after on a day-to-day basis today here with the center? Give us a little bit of that understanding of that association with the university and exactly what you guys are going after today on the challenges that are needed to be solved for rural healthcare.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for let's peel the onion back and go a little bit deeper, or as I like to say, hold our nose and jump in the deep end of the pool here. So it's great to have a great vision and mission statement. So our vision and mission statement, transform rural and Native American health. And we're going to do that through implementing new care models in IT solutions or information technology solutions. Well, how did we get there, right? Well, we got there specifically on the care delivery and the IT solutions. So next, after we kind of figured out our strategy of where we wanted to focus on rural and Native American health, and oh, by the way, what's brilliant and really awesome about this center is Oklahoma State University is a land grant university, and as such is focused on everything related to rural, so vet, agriculture, et cetera. So our mission aligned perfectly with the overall global mission of Oklahoma State University as a land grant university. And then go up one layer above that on top of it. If you look at the state of Oklahoma, we're one of the few states that we have more than 1 million citizens who are living in rural and more than a third of our population living in rural. So there are other states that have more rural citizens but lower percents. Texas, for instance. Texas has more rural citizens, but on a percent basis, it's a much lower percent. You have other states like Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, higher percents living in rural, but much smaller numbers. So if you draw a 2x2 grid there, we're one of the few states that has over 1 million citizens living in rural and over a third of our population in rural. So the center is perfectly positioned within the university, and it's perfectly positioned within the state. So what do we actually, to get to your next question, which is, well, what do you guys do every morning when you wake up? Well, the areas we focus on is when we started the center, we went out and surveyed 250 rural providers. Once again, going back to my comment that, entrepreneurs unfortunately have a tendency to find solutions for problems that don't exist. So I said, we're going to go out there and find out what their major challenges are. I had 2 gentlemen that worked for me. One of them, his name was Mike. The other, his name was Ike. And if you remember that candy, that is the candy, the Mike and Ike candy. So we called it the Mike and Ike Show. So Mike and Ike went out and surveyed 250 rural providers and actually asked them what their major challenges were. And what we ended up finding out was really 2 things. A lot of the rural providers, especially at the primary care level, are wasting a lot of their time on inefficient workflow processes, which is trapping clinical capacity. Our data showed that many of the rural providers are spending about a third of their time on inefficient workflow processes, whereas their urban counterparts are about 10%. So there's about a 20% gap there that they're wasting with inefficient workflow processes. So our theory was, rather than simply trying to focus on how do we actually graduate more providers and get them into the rural markets to deal with the significant understaffing of primary care in rural America, we said, you guys keep doing that. What we're going to focus on is if we can close that gap on workflow inefficiencies, then we can unlock trapped clinical capacity, right? So the first part of the center focuses on things like lean workflows, care models, transportation models, et cetera, to knock down all of those workflow inefficiencies to build clinical capacity by unlocking that trapped clinical capacity. The second issue we heard when we were out traveling around the rural marketplace with the Mike and Ike Show was the lack of subspecialists. Mike, I call it the lack of ologist. There are no cardiologists, neurologists, nephrologists, pick your favorite ologist. They're just not there. So consequently, the rural providers end up doing a lot more subspecialty care in rural markets. So what is a primary care doc? Mostly what they do is they write scripts and they refer to treat. Problem in rural markets is they can write scripts, but there's nobody to refer to treat to. So the second part of the center takes this large data set that Cerner Corporation donated to the center. And as everybody knows, Oracle now owns Cerner. But at the time, Cerner Corporation donated to us a clinical data set, a de-identified clinical data set with clinical data from 63 million patients that allowed us to build a series of clinical decision support algorithms to put in the hands of primary care docs to manage subspecialty care in rural markets where there are no ologists. So what does the center do? The center does everything on the primary care side on improving workflows on the primary care side, and then adding technology layers to build subspecialty capacity in the rural marketplace. At the highest level, that's who we are. A little bit of the numbers, because I'm proud of the center. We started it 10 years ago. It was just myself. 10 years later, we're almost 20 full-time employees. We've attracted over $28 million in funding over that period of time. We've published over 158 papers through the center, and we have 3 patents. So it's been a great journey. It's probably been one of my most rewarding professional experiences of my life, among many of them. But I've been really proud of what we've been able to build there. And the operative word there is we. It's a wonderful team, and I'm really proud of it. And that's the story.
Absolutely powerful. Incredible, incredible story, William. And yes, you should certainly be proud of it, because there is no time better than now to bring those types of solutions to bear during this crisis that we are experiencing across our nation. Now, William, quick question for you that
Sure.
kind of popped in my head, given that so many startups and entrepreneurs and, very innovative type, disruptors and high growth tech company founders and team members are listening into this podcast on the regular. And we are also part of the Health Podcast Network, where there's a lot more podcasters that are talking about health tech innovation. What does this center mean for the 2 guys in the proverbial garage building the next big disruption for healthcare? What does this mean for those innovators out there that are incredibly passionate and really working their tail ends off to bring solutions to bear to help around exactly the problem set that you just discussed?
Thank you for the question. A little bit about the center also, to give you a little bit more color, or as you say, peel the onion back, look under the hood here, is I told you about the innovation stuff that we do. So in building primary care capacity and actually building subspecialty capacity as well with technology layers, we also built what I call my implementation arm of the center. So we have the innovation arm and we have the implementation arm, right? Because as I tell people all the time in my innovation center, innovation without implementation produces PowerPoints and PDFs. And what I wanted to do is actually produce real results. So I said, everything we do is going to be market relevant. And also we're going to take it to the next level and press it into the marketplace through our, what was non-existent at the time. We actually built a series of, I call them my implementation channels or networks. So we built a patient network through a program called the Health Access Network, where we're now providing care and case management services to 75,000 rural citizens in Oklahoma through a contract we have with the state Medicaid payer. We have a network of rural clinics called the Rural Health Network, which is a network of about 30 clinics representing 50 doctors. We have a network of rural hospitals called the Rural Health Network, RHN. And then most recently, we launched our what's called the Business Collective on Health, which is a network of self-insured employers. So now I've got a patient channel, a clinic channel, a hospital channel, and an employer channel. So now I've got the channels through which to actually implement my innovations. Back to your original question. If I'm an entrepreneur sitting out there, and the one thing when I present on my fund and my innovation center, and at the end, I try to tie it all together like this, Mike. The one thing I didn't appreciate when I launched this innovation center was how to tie together the venture firm with the work on the innovation center. And here's the tie. One of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs out there is they're stuck sometimes in a do loop they can't get out of, right? Especially on the healthcare side, because you need clinical data, you need market acceptance, right, et cetera. So sometimes you get stuck in this do loop you can't get out of, right? Which is you can't get implementation because you don't have the data, but you can't get the data because you don't have the adoption, right? So you're stuck in this do loop, right? So you can't get adoption because you don't have the data, but you can't get the data because you haven't gotten the adoption, right? So you're stuck in this do loop you can't get out of sometimes. And I saw it for 24 years as a venture capitalist. We'd fund these companies and they'd be selling to hospitals, to payers, to self-insured employers, to doctors, et cetera. And they're like, where's your data? And of course, we were bringing a new innovative product to market. We didn't have it, right? And so sometimes it was really hard in the urban setting to break through that log jam. When you look at the rural markets, and one of the things I tell entrepreneurs, my big message to all the entrepreneurs listening out there right now, is don't overlook the rural markets as a place to go to break through that log jam. It is war out there in rural healthcare right now. They are struggling just to survive. They don't have enough primary care docs. They have zero specialists. Bring innovations out there and they're more likely to adopt it. And then eventually, I get the challenges of having a company that sells into that channel. But then eventually you can move into the urban market. Can I give you a couple of real world examples real quick, Mike? We developed a tool that helps diagnose and stage and monitor diabetic retinopathy. If you live long enough with diabetes, you'll eventually go blind because of it. You need to go to an ophthalmologist if you're a diabetic to get your eyes examined for an annual eye exam. The compliance rates are abysmal. The other problem in rural markets is there are no ophthalmologists out there. So we developed a tool simply looking at the patient's demographic information, comorbidity, and lab data that we think we can predict with over 90% sensitivity and specificity whether or not that diabetic patient has diabetic retinopathy without the need of an ophthalmologist. Guess what? I show that in an urban market. Invariably, the ophthalmologists are going to stand up and say, whoa, wait a minute. There's no way a clinical decision support tool or a predictive analytics solution can do what I can do looking in a dilated eye, right? Turns out our clinical data argues against that. However, if I take that into a rural market, their response is, can we get it tomorrow? We haven't seen an ophthalmologist out here ever, right? And so think about that dynamic of selling into the urban markets where you're facing those constant headwinds. Another one of the examples is Cardia. Cardia is one of my portfolio companies in my venture fund. If you watch late night TV, you see the device where you put your fingers on it and it streams your EKG to your smartphone. And when I show that device, so it gives you a single lead EKG, it's got about 10 algorithms on top of it. The device is FDA approved. The algorithms are all FDA approved to track and monitor about 10 heart arrhythmias. If I show that in an urban market, invariably the cardiologists are going to go, whoa, wait a minute. There's no way a device that runs on a smartphone with algorithms can manage a heart arrhythmia like I can do with looking at a 12-lead EKG strip, right? I take it out to a rural market. Those primary care docs say, we have no way to manage atrial fibrillation patients. Give us a device that I can send my patient home with to be able to monitor their atrial fibrillation. We have no cardiologists out here. Perfect. So my big message to the entrepreneurs, the two of them that you mentioned, wherever you are in the United States of America, don't overlook the rural markets as a place to get your proof points, to get you started. And to do that, email me, call me. We're happy to work with them. We work with big companies. We work with small companies. Happy to help partner with them to help them on their journey because it helps us, because we're here to bring innovative technologies to the market, and we know it helps the entrepreneurs.
All right, real quick hits. William, before we kind of get the crystal ball off the shelf, what are one or two to three innovations right now in the marketplace? You know, it's heating up quickly. Innovation is moving at us faster than it ever has been, especially on this side of the pandemic. We've just watched the acceleration of technology innovation in health and care, which is great. What are one or two to three that, quick hits that you are personally excited about?
I'm going to state some of the obvious ones here. The most important doctor we're going to have in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years is going to be the doctor we carry around in our hand every day, which is our smartphone. So much of our healthcare is going to be pushed to the smartphone, number one. So big focus on how do we push more and more healthcare to the smartphone. The second is the use of, and I even hate to say it because I've seen it in 24 years. I've seen all the buzzwords that come and go, but it's the use of artificial intelligence to improve, I think, initially a lot of the workflow challenges. And honestly, and not to plug you guys, because I know that's not the point of this podcast, and I appreciate you, Mike, saying that this is meant to be a podcast about healthcare. But what I'm really excited about is companies like Ambiance, because having AI layers like that to improve the workflows, we are so understaffed in healthcare right now, and having those layers to improve the workflows, that frees up the clinical capacity of doctors to actually provide clinical care is enormous. So we're going to see more of those, not less. And so I'm really excited about those types of layers and the work you guys are doing, honestly. And then I would say, lastly, it's the movement of healthcare away from fully insured to self-insured as we see more and more large employers move into that marketplace is probably a third layer. There's three for you, Mike.
Love it. Great top three. Those are excellent ones. And those are definitely here now, ready to go. We are finally at a place where everything that you just described on those top three hits, they are actionable today, which is really, really exciting. This is not a future state that we're living in. But let's go to future state. Let's talk a little bit more about the center, William. Let's get back to that. Of course, you guys are 10 years in, have done amazing work with the center, but the work is not done. Let's talk about the next 10 years. Grab that crystal ball. What are you in the center seeing, not just for, of course, the center itself, but more broadly around rural health and care? What are you seeing? What should our community be mindful of? What are you guys thinking about over these next coming years for all the wonderful work you are already engaged in and want to continue to move forward?
Yeah, I'm going to touch on two areas. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the rural health plight and just kind of quantify it a little bit more so it will really drive home the point of why the need is so great out there. Let's take a state like Oklahoma. Right now, we have about 880 rural primary care docs. Depending on what data analysis you look at, we need about 1,800 rural primary care docs. We are just to get to the national average. So that's number of docs per 1,000 rural citizens. So we're currently at 880. We need to be about 1,800. We're about 40% of where we need to be. It's also a burning rope problem, Mike. 25% of our rural docs are over the age of 65, and 50% in aggregate are over 55. So it's a burning rope problem. Check in 10 years from now and see how much the primary care plight in rural America is going to be worse than it is today. So, and at the end of the day, we can't simply train and graduate enough healthcare providers and stick them in rural markets and expect to close that gap. I mean, the numbers are enormous. So we're going to see continued emphasis on workflow improvements and technology layers to fill that gap. Those are the solutions. That's the kind of crystal ball in our center to continue to do that. And as we continue to digitize more and more data, we can continue to get better at it, developing these clinical tools to put in the hands of doctors so they don't actually need some of the ologists. So we'll continue to do more of that. If you ask me longer term, the area that I think we're eventually going to get into, which I'm really excited about, I was really blessed for 3 years of my life to work in China and work in healthcare in China and have had other experiences in international healthcare. If you look at the plight of rural healthcare and you overlay international healthcare, it's almost 1-to-1. What is rural healthcare in addition to the numbers? Well, the patients are older, sicker, poorer. The providers are fewer, as I mentioned. They tend to be under and uninsured. They tend to lack emergency medicine. They lack technology layers. Everything I just described about rural medicine, if I told you to describe healthcare in China, India, basically pick any of your international markets, you would see a Venn diagram of almost 1-to-1 between rural healthcare in America and international healthcare. I see us eventually moving into international healthcare. And you asked me, maybe this is kind of putting the cart in front of the horse here, but asking the community is if there's folks out there focused on international healthcare, whether it's their international folks listening internationally or the Gates Foundations or the Clinton Foundations that are focused on international healthcare. Rural healthcare is a proxy for international healthcare, and the stuff we're doing on rural healthcare right now is fully applicable to the international marketplace. As a matter of fact, one of my slides I always show is healthcare in Shanghai, China has more in common with Pawhuska, Oklahoma than it does with Los Angeles. And people are shocked by that statement, but it's true. And so long-term, Mike, I see our center eventually moving into international healthcare because the challenges we're addressing are the challenges that are seen internationally. And it's not just rural international, it's urban international, everything I just articulated.
Well, William, whether you like it or not, I think you just signed up for a second episode because what a fascinating topic, tying rural healthcare to the international markets. That in and of itself, very, very intriguing. So we'll put a pin on that one for now, William, because I think we're going to be coming back and unpacking that one a bit more. And of course, we'll put the crystal ball back on the shelf for now. Let's bring it back to current state, William. As I mentioned to you before we hit the record button, an incredible community rallied around this podcast. Some of the most passionate leaders, incredible minds pushing our industry forward, and they love to help out. What's one problem, need, or question that you have that our community can be helping you with?
Yeah, I would say, how do we actually get more people continually interested in rural healthcare? Not really because of the need, but because it's a proxy for everything as it relates to moving into urban healthcare and into international markets. 10 years ago, that was a story that nobody wanted to hear, but we're just starting to see the cusp of that. And so my reach out to everybody out there is how can we continue to carry this message about rural healthcare and the need in rural healthcare, but more importantly, not only because of rural and Native American healthcare and the needs there, but also it's a proxy for urban healthcare and it's a proxy for international healthcare.
Well, William, in order to continue those conversations with you, how does the community get a hold of you? Social media handles, websites, or otherwise, how do they get a hold of you?
Probably the best way is at my email, which is wpaiva, which is spelled P as in Paul, AI, V as in Victor, A, at okstate.edu is probably the best way. I respond to all emails. I can't guarantee turnaround time, but I guarantee I'll respond within 24 hours. And so email is the best way to get a hold of me.
Easy enough. And for our listening community, just scroll on down into the episode notes. Those contact points will be in there for William. Feel free to go ahead and reach out him directly with those contact points. Of course, you can head over to our free global online community over at passionatepioneers.com. There will be a post for William's episode where you can find those contact points, leave any comments, questions, feedback, or otherwise. Again, over at passionatepioneers.com. William, we are winding this down, already getting the calendar out to schedule that second episode that we talked about earlier. But as we wind this one down, before we let you go, we do have one more piece for you. It's a fill in the blank. I'm a passionate pioneer because?
I'm a passionate pioneer because within healthcare, I want everybody to not lose sight of the fact that you can do good and you can do well. So you can do good by society and you can do well by your stakeholders, which is what makes health innovation far greater than innovating in any of the other categories.
Well done. And you sprinkle a little bit of luck on top of that, and you have a recipe for incredible success in moving our industry forward. William, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, sharing all the wonderful things that you have been working on relentlessly over the years. You have been doing incredible work, and so many of us are so fortunate to be able to working alongside you. Continue it. Continue the path. We will be having you back again, as I mentioned. But for now, William, thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it, and I'm honored, and thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. We'd love to hear your feedback about the podcast so we can continue to improve this community and to further support the pioneers being featured. Lastly, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and invite your friends and colleagues to join us. This is Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. I look forward to having you back with us during our next episode.